The 7th graders named me Karen? Hey everybody, welcome to our last little installment for Chapter 2, Section 3. Okay, if it's in red, it goes in your science notebook just like usual. Here's today's goals. Describe what lipids are, where they can be found, and what your body does with them. Number 2, learn that DNA is a, quote, nucleic acid, and what the building blocks are for DNA. 3, learn that the molecule called ATP is a fuel source for your cells and can be recharged like a battery. All right, so here we go. Quick question, nothing is in red here, just a review question from last time. What are carbohydrates made of? Amino acids, sugars, lipids, proteins. Hopefully you answered sugars right there. So that was one thing we talked about last time. Building blocks of carbohydrates are sugars. Another quick question from last time. Are all sugars the same? Hopefully you're looking at this diagram. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, those are all sugars. So no, not all sugars are the same. So if you have this idea that all sugar that exists is that white stuff in the bowl in the kitchen, get that out of your head. That's one type of sugar, okay? Another question, is energy stored or released when chemical bonds are broken? Hopefully looking at your picture progression on the bottom, if you were with us last time, or even if you weren't and you watched our video, you saw that something like methane, which is a carbon and 4 hydrogens, when you break these chemical bonds represented by these gray sticks, when you break a chemical bond, it releases energy. So we can use that to make fire in our homes for natural gas. Your body, when you break chemical bonds in food that you eat, that releases energy that helps you stay alive. How many of the big 6 elements from the periodic table can you remember in the next 15 seconds, starting now? Well, hopefully you picked out carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. And those are over there in our non-metal neighborhood. Remember, think of these as like ingredients. All right, here we go. So I will pause this. If you're live with us, you can get stuff down. If you're not live, you can pause it as you need to. So lipids, okay, that's our next little chunk. Still going with Section 3 of Chapter 2. So lipids are fats and oils. They cannot mix with water. So some of you might remember this from the classroom. And you asked me what it is. Some of you have figured it out. Others, I kind of joking around with you till it's a special potion. It's really not. All this is water that was dyed with blue food coloring. And then just regular old vegetable oil from the kitchen was poured in there. So we have a lipid in here, right, which is an oil from the kitchen. I think it was just vegetable oil. So you can't mix these two. So some of you in class have taken this and you have just shooken it and shooken it and shooken it. And then if you put it back on the desk and you give it enough time, it's always going to separate because you can't mix lipids with water. Still with lipids. So plants generally are going to store lipids as oils. Sorry, I'll go back there. Still with lipids. Animals are going to store lipids as fats generally. So animals can store lipids as oils, but we're just going to try and keep it basic. So let's just go with animals, store them as fats. Of course, a lot of you probably know something like a silver salmon. They can store it as oils also, so oils and fats. But that looks like a delicious, probably a ribeye steak. Lipids, they can be used for energy. Making this slide certainly got me hungry. So there's some pork baby back ribs. That's one of my favorite things to make. Lots of fat in those, so that fat is a lipid. So here's some other examples of foods high in fat. So again, lipid is just another kind of funky science word. If you want to replace it with fat and oil for your brain, if that helps you, I think that's a great idea. So lipids, just think fats and oils. All right, we are still on lipids, and we are going to talk about cell membranes. So cell membranes, just think of them like the outer shell of your cells. And they're made of phospholipids, and we'll cover that here in the next couple of slides, what phospholipids are. So get that down in your notes, and we will talk about it more here very shortly. So another way to think of cell membranes, I've been watching castle shows with my son. You could think of a cell membrane as like a castle wall. So it's kind of like the outer barrier or that outer defense. Now, are there ways to get in and out, doorways and things like that? Yeah, there sure are. But a cell membrane, you can think of it as like that outer protective coating, kind of like a castle wall. All right, so still talking about cell membranes. I just want you to look at this little animation right here, this diagram. So this is a phospholipid molecule right here. So I want you to just notice the basic structure. It's got like a head and two tails. Lipid bilayer, so if you think of the word bicycle, it's got two tires. So if you look at this, this is representing a cell membrane. You have two layers of these phospholipid molecules. So that's where the word bilayer comes from. So let's take a closer look at phospholipid molecules. All right, so we have some stuff in red here. So let's get this in there. Hydrophilic, think of that as something that loves water. Hydrophobic, think of it as something that repels water or it hates water. So if you have a phobia, like arachnophobia, a lot of people know about that one. That means like you really do not like spiders. You're scared of them. You're repelled of them. You want to be away from them. So let's take a look at this again. So our phospholipid molecule, let's look at the bottom right of the screen. So the last slide we saw that there's a head and two tails. So now let's take a closer look at that. So the head represented by the circle there, that's hydrophilic. So that means that part of the molecule actually likes water. It's attracted to water. The tails are the opposite. They're hydrophobic. So it has a phobia of water. So those tails, they repel water. They want nothing to do with it. Water and the tails do not mix with each other. So why is this important? Well, if this is your cell membrane right here, you have an area in here in the middle where all the tails are that repel water. And then out here, the heads on both sides, those are going to attract water. And as we get more into cells, this will make more sense. Okay, nucleic acids. So now we are on a different topic. So we're moving away from lipids and we're going to talk about something totally different. So let's try and keep this as straightforward as we can. Nucleic acids, just think DNA, okay? DNA is a nucleic acid. So let's just try and use those words interchangeably. If you hear nucleic acids, just try and go directly towards the word DNA. The bottom bullet, so what are the building blocks of this stuff? So the building blocks of DNA are called nucleotides. So we've talked about building blocks a lot in here. Building blocks of carbohydrates are sugars. Building blocks of proteins are amino acids. Building blocks of nucleic acids right here are called nucleotides. And this is a representation of DNA. So it's called a double helix. It's like a ladder that gets twisted and then packed down in tight and put into the nucleus of your cell. So don't copy this diagram. I just want you to look at how complex even the building blocks of DNA could be. So I know that kind of looks red. You don't have to write that down. But just look at all this. Look at a bunch of our big six in here. And remember, these lines represent chemical bonds. You can see some are single, some are double. So that's just a building block. So cells and molecules are pretty complex, aren't they? Okay, new topic. So what the heck is ATP? It's called adenosine triphosphate. You do not have to memorize that word, but we are going to get you to hopefully have a grasp of what ATP is and what it's used for and what it looks like. So this is one of the most basic diagrams you could get for ATP. And this is the part I want you to look at over here. You have 3 of these phosphates right here. So let's take a look at what goes on with ATP. Alright, so let's get this in our notebook. ATP molecules, think fuel for your cells. So take a look at this right here on the left. See how it has like a full charged battery right there? And you've got all 3 of these phosphates right here. So check it out over here on the right. If we break one of these chemical bonds right here, energy is going to get released. And your cells are going to use that energy to move all sorts of little pieces of machinery. And the cool thing is, if you see how the battery is not charged up as much right here, you can take this and you can recharge it and use it over and over again. So ATP, I want you to think of it as like a rechargeable battery. So up here at the top, add this into your notes. So ATP can be recharged, which is just amazing that you have these molecules in your body like little batteries, and they can be recharged to help run all the equipment in your cells. So your cells have all sorts of neat things, things that spin and rotate and machines that walk. Page 45 in your textbook has a good basic diagram if you want to take a look at that. So not in red, just talking. So energy from food sources, so energy from proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, all this stuff that we eat, we can use that to recharge our ATP. So if you ate some simple sugars today or you ate some complex sugars today, when we break these bonds right here, it's going to release energy. You can take that energy in your body and recharge ATP. So think about recharging your phone. That's not magical energy, right? You plug it into the wall, that energy came from somewhere to recharge your battery. And so think of that happening in your body. Energy has to come from somewhere to recharge your ATP. And it comes from your food. Alright, so we have covered the 4 macromolecules: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. A big part of science, again, is just getting this new language under your belt, you guys. So think of things this way. Little mistake there. Micro means small, macro means big. So a macromolecule, that just means it's a big molecule. If you go with that, you'll be fine. So how do you feel about today's goals? We'll pause it real quick, take a look at them. So hopefully you can describe what a lipid is, where you can find them, what your body can do with them, that DNA is a nucleic acid, what are its building blocks. Hopefully you're thinking nucleotides. And hopefully you learned that the molecule ATP is a fuel source for your cell, and it can be recharged. Looks like we don't have time to put in the Bioman cell membrane, but we can look at that live during our Zoom. So I hope you got something out of this, and we will have practice questions before we do our quiz on all this stuff. Thanks.